human will, which while having life does not exercise it, to give free life to my fiat. This, however, is to the great profit for the soul, because she gives a human will and receives a divine one. She gives a finite and limited will and receives an infinite and limitless one. So he's saying that really this is the greatest of miracles, that a soul would, even though we'll always have a human will, even in heaven, because we can't be a human being without a human will, that we will, on earth, he wants us to sacrifice it by not exercising the human will and always let the divine will operate in us to do everything we do. And everything we do will just be mostly the ordinary, everyday things that we always do. But little by little, he may lead us here and there, this place or that place, or this idea, or this other idea, or this. We will change. We definitely will change. I'd like to take a break. Not a break, but take a little parentheses here and speak about the four temperaments of the human soul. In order to enter heaven, in addition to being, infused with the divine will, our souls have to be in perfect equilibrium, like a perfect sphere. And when we're born, when we're conceived, our souls are given the temperaments, the four basic temperaments, but almost always one or two of those temperaments, if not more, are out of perfect equilibrium. The only case that it wasn't with our Blessed Mother, that I know of. And so we have the temperament, the sanguine temperament, which those people are very lively, outgoing, what do you call them, extroverts, basically, and they get a lot of people around them, and people want to be around them, and they make people feel good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's more or less the sanguine temperament. And then you have the melancholy temperament, which is at the other extreme, in which they are kind of introverted and thinking of themselves a lot, and they're worried about this and worried about that, and they're kind of see the bad in everything instead of the good, and always worrying and fussing or whatever. So I'm not saying I'm saying it correctly, I'm just trying to remember what I learned. And then you have the choleric temperament, which like St. Peter, as soon as something happens, he's going to move right in that second, and take care of it. So choleric likes to react immediately to stimuli, and to either angrily or even something good, but they act spontaneously and quickly. And then the phlegmatic temperament responds slowly to stimuli. Like if somebody, like if the fire alarm went off right now, the choleric guy would be out there in a second, and he'd be trying to take care of something and get it straightened out. And the phlegmatic guy would be sitting there thinking about, well, now, what did they say about which door is supposed to go out, that door or that door? And then they keep wondering about it, and by that time the fire is already developed in the So that's, so anyway, we have these four temperaments. And the human beings that are born in original sin, without their even asked for it, they seem to get a special emphasis on one of those temperaments and a sub-emphasis on maybe another. And so when I was younger, and I'm still got the same disposition, I don't think I conquered it yet, of course, but I realized that I had a choleric temper. And in other words, my problem is I was trained militarily. I like things to be on time, and I don't like people to mess around and get late. That was always bothering me. And then the other thing was, what else was it? Oh yeah. I like things to be in good order. And in the way that I think it should be, So if things are starting to get out of order, I get upset and I tell them that, yeah, jump on and get them straightened out and right off the bat. But people know that I have a choleric temperament. They all laugh about it. In fact, I was consoled when I read a book on this subject that most of the United States had choleric temperaments. And so anyway, I've been, hoping and praying that God will get my skewed sphere, like my choleric temperament's out like this, kind of messes up the roundness of this perfect situation. Knock it back, and knock it back, and knock it back, and knock it back, get it back in the middle, and try to round things out before I die. And I noticed that lately I seem to make some improvement after all these years. When things are starting to get me a little bothered me, for example, I'll pick on my angel in disguise back there. We were driving from Portuna to, what do you call it? Knock. And it was evening, it got dark, and we didn't know where the hell we were going. We thought we knew where we were going. Well, back in my old days, I'd be on pins and needles. Let me have a map. I'm going to tell you what to do. We're going to stop here and figure out exactly where we're going to go. I'm not going to put up with any left turns, but we should make a right turn. That's the way I would have done it. But I noticed that night, I very rarely said anything. If he wanted to turn left instead of right, and I thought he should have turned right, he turned left. That's not even worried about it. After a while, he realized he turned the wrong way, And so, but anyway, the only reason I bring it up is because I'm happy that God allowed me to have an improvement over that skewed temperament. It's true that Jesus doesn't like people to worry. And some people are natural worriers. I mean, I should say natural, but they are worriers. And Jesus doesn't really like that too much. He didn't like people to worry. The worst thing in the world is to be scrupulous, and the other is to be worrying and anxious. There's no reason for that, particularly if you want to live in the divine will. Now, if you're coming out of that problem and you're really interested in the divine will and you want to be in it, this is the solution. Little by little, by little by little, over a period of time, those worrying aspects are going to go away. You're going to be, see, Jesus said living in the divine will requires abandonment to the divine will. There's been books written on abandonment to the divine will by many saints. And the abandonment is that when circumstances come up that you have no control over it, you just relax. You just let it go. Let it happen. Let it go. And if there's anything you can do to help in a bad situation, then you can. But if you can't do anything, to relax, be abandoned to it. And so that's a pretty big step to be able to do that in the spiritual life, but it becomes easier in the divine will. And Jesus does relate living in the divine will with abandonment to the divine will. Because if you're not abandoned, you're really not living in the divine will. So they do go together. So when things happen and you have no control and you have no responsibility or whatever, even if you have responsibility but you can't solve it, just be abandoned, accept it. And it's more than being just resigned. Sometimes you can be resigned with a mean face. Oh man, oh, but you can be resigned and be peaceful and happy about God's will being done, even though you don't like what's happening. If it's not your will, for you personally, if it's not your will, it's God's will. Like if somebody shoots you, when your will gets shot, it was God's will that you got shot, because it's what they call the permissive will of God. He permits things because he wants to accomplish something else because of that. And for whatever his purpose is. So if he doesn't want you to get shot, you ain't going to get shot. He doesn't want you to be shot normally, but there might be some situation in life where in which He permits it for whatever reason. And so that's what you call the permissive will of God. But then there's a wanted will of God. And the wanted will of God is what we always want to be tuned into, and then be abandoned to His permissive will. When I skipped around earlier, I have a hard time separating anything new from when I skipped around. Okay, I'll read this, and I'm not sure if I read it, but if I did, it doesn't hurt to hear it again. My daughter, I possess so much joy, happiness, and blessedness that at every moment I could give ever new joys and blessings. Every time a soul acts in my will, and we did, it makes a space into which I can bring forth new blessings and new joys. So every time we act in the divine will, just move my hand, that's not. Every time soul acts in my will, it makes a space into which I can bring forth new blessings and new joys. And since my will is immense and penetrates all souls and all things, when my blessings go forth, they first flow in the soul that acts in my will, because such a soul is a primary reason why I'm able to bestow my blessings. So I read that last sentence again. And since my will is immense and penetrates all souls and all things, when my blessings go forth, they first flow in the soul that acts in my will, because such a soul is a primary reason I'm able to bestow my blessings. I don't fully understand that, but most of it, but part of it, but I just accept it right now because I don't understand some of it. I think I would like to talk a little bit about the Eucharist. It came to my mind, and maybe maybe you can learn something you didn't know, and you might learn some things that even the theologians don't know, unless they've been studying recently. Okay, we have the Holy Eucharist that Jesus left to us, and He asked His Father, would it be okay if I remain on earth in the Holy Eucharist after I ascend to heaven? And the Father agreed to let Jesus remain on earth in the Holy Eucharist, body, blood, soul, and divinity, and that includes the divine will. Of course, you can't separate the divine will from Jesus. And He says that He spent hours and hours sitting on cold metal inside tabernacles. And He doesn't get anybody to come and console Him and visit Him. So it seems that in the Eucharist, He does have ways that He can suffer. I'm sure people know more about this than I do. But of course, when His typical body, the body that our whole body that we see when He's on earth, when that ascended to heaven, that body cannot suffer. And but on the Eucharist, I don't know. But I would like to go into a few things about the Eucharist. That when the priest says the words of the consecration, I also want to bring up a word. You might want to write it down for those who never heard the word before. The word is called concomitance. C-O-N. C-O-M-M-I-T-A-N-C-E. So when the priest says, this is my body, is Jesus speaking in at that moment? Because it's not the priest's body, it's Jesus' body. This is my body. And He consecrates the host and transubstantiates it from bread into the substance of His body, blood, soul, and divinity. Now, the power of those words, this is my body, only transubstantiate at that moment bread into His flesh. Don't call it sugar. Into His flesh. But by the principle of concomitance, which St. Thomas Aquinas used, the blood comes with the body. And of course, his soul is there, and but he's a living Jesus, a living host. By the way, the term living host, I've got to mention, that's what he wants to make of us. And he says, I'll enjoy the living host much more than the Eucharistic host. Okay. And so he says, it's by the principle of concomitance that the blood also comes with the body and the soul of divinity. So at that first consecration, you do have the body and blood, but the power of the words, this is my body, only transubstantiates bread into his flesh. But the blood comes too. Now, in the second consecration, he says, this is the cup of my blood. The same thing happens. The wine is transubstantiated into his blood by the power of those words. This is the chalice of my blood, or the cup of my blood. But then the flesh comes with it by the principle of concomitance. Also, by the same principle, in many ways, we can talk a lot about this, the Holy Spirit and God the Father come also. When it says divinity, it includes the three persons of the Trinity. So the Father and the Son are present in each host. Now, if the Father and the Son and Jesus are there in that host, so is their kingdom of the divine will. So their divine will is in each, the kingdom of the divine will is in each consecrated host. But it belongs to them, not to us. I mean, for the divine will is different. But before the divine will is given to people who want it, only the Trinity possessed the divine will, and the person who received the Eucharist does not possess the divine will just because it's there. But and when we live in the divine will, then both of us have the same will, kingdom of the divine will. Now, he says that the Holy Eucharist is only present in us until it no longer has the appearance of bread. That's what it said. I'm in there, and as long as the host has the appearance of bread. If you were, someone would be unconscious who did an operation on after Eucharist, and you open his stomach, and that host still has the appearance of bread, then Jesus will still be there. But when it loses the appearance of bread, then he goes back to where he came from, and that's the bosom of his Father. Now, I wanted to go on particularly about the kingdom of the divine will being in the Eucharist. When you read the writings of Louisa, and you find out that the divine, everything that has existed, does exist, and will exist, is inside the divine will. And every part, and even there's no parts, but every place where the divine will is, all that is present. And I was looking out the window in Florida when I was giving a talk some years ago, and I saw a palm tree, and I told the people based on my light at that time that palm tree is inside this Eucharist. And I said, whoop, how can you say that? Because, the host is this big, the palm tree is 25, 30 feet tall. How can that be inside the Eucharist? And the only answer I had, I knew I was right in saying that, but I tried to find out the way to explain it. And I didn't come up with the best answer, but I came up with an answer. I said, well, the love and the work of God that brought that tree into existence is inside that host. And that love and work of God is that tree, because there's a particular love and a particular work that makes that palm tree exist. And that love and work is inside that host. So Jesus tells us that all the lives of people in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, and the apostles, and Jesus and Mary, and everything, all of their lives, everything that they did and so forth, is all contained in every Eucharistic host. It's because the divine will is operated in that host. And everything that exists came from the divine will and still comes from the divine will, it still exists because of the divine will. So all of that is contained in every single host. So we have a lot to learn over the next 1,000 years as they start studying deeper and deeper and deeper into these writings of Louisa. You'll find that those who've been reading Louisa, you'll find that you'll read maybe a whole chapter or several chapters or whatever. She goes by dates or her entries. And you read them and you read words and you read every word, but it doesn't go deep into your mind and soul to understand it. But you read all the words. But when you go back the next time, I didn't understand that before, now I understand why that word is there. And the same thing happens every single time, unless you just read them real quick. So, little by little, over a period of time, you'll learn deeper and deeper and deeper into the meaning, the fullness, deeper to the fullness of the meaning of every word in the book of heaven. And I would say, just my own opinion, but I would say that the depths of the truths that are in the book of heaven have no bottom. There's no bottom to the depths, no bottom. That it's just infinitely full of truth. And we will come in different people, different places, different times, penetrate deeper and deeper and deeper into this great mystery of the divine will, reigning and operating in people. So those that are coming in the future, Jesus said some of them will surpass Adam. And Jesus said Adam was deeply in the divine will at one point. But he said there will be people coming in the future who will surpass him. Now, Louisa, all the indications from everything that we've ever studied, and I'm just throwing this out because I believe it's true. I'm not sure that we can say it with total, absolute certainty for the church, in the eyes of the church, but I'm quite sure it is true based on everything I've read. James and John were walking along one day with Jesus, and they were arguing over who's going to sit on the right or the left of Jesus in heaven. And he says, that is not for you to decide. And so we know now, everybody I know who's been in the divine will, priests and everybody else, they all believe Mary, and Mary's on the right side, and Louisa, somehow she's up there right next to our Blessed Mother. Not because she's as high as our Blessed Mother, but because she's the second highest. Now, I'll tell you why that would be second highest. Jesus says, in fact, I think it's in the books, but not on the cover. There are three major, super major works of God. They call them three fiats of God. The fiat of creation, the fiat of redemption, and the fiat voluntas tua, thy will be done on earth as the rest of it, sicut in cielo, as it is in heaven. Jesus said there's three major fiats of God. Let it be done, let it be done, let it be done. And this is happening now, right now. And she would put at the head of that. She would put at the head of the third fiat of God. And she was intimately involved with the Lord in making it, preparing it for all the rest of us. And so when we know the life of Louisa, because you have to really read the writings to know her life. And we have, a lot of people think, well, there's such saint must be, my favorite saint, or this saint, or St. Joseph, or St. John the Baptist, or this or this or this. No, when you read the whole story of Louisa, and her role as the head of the third fiat of God, when he gets the most glory. She's the, I forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, we have no doubt in our own soul that this is true. That the two women occupy the highest places in heaven after God. And now this may offend you if you have your favorite saint, because I remember when I was here back in the mid-90s, we went around talking about recent, and some people will get very upset. Oh, my saints are bigger than she, man. I love so and so and so and so. So, get over it. You know, get over it. Louise is higher than your favorite saint. Okay? She's really, really high. When you see how much suffering she had, no one can be compared. Except our Blessed Mother. She's the only one that out-suffered Louisa, and of course Jesus. All right, see if there's anything else. Shoot, there was something I talked about last night. Oh shoot, I was going to talk about that now. But anyway, since we have a little moment when I don't remember what I was going to talk about. If you have a problem, if you have a unsettled feeling about this, let's try to get it out of your system and get it over so you can rush into the kingdom of the Father's will. So if you don't feel bad if you have questions and you have doubts or you have wonderings or suspicions or whatever, be glad to hear what you'd like to ask me about. I have no problem with that. Don't feel uncomfortable. We are all concerned about sinners in the world who may be in danger of going to hell. Can you say something about the way we can think about this and help bring about their redemption, salvation, and through the divine will? Who said the word devotion? Who wrote this?
I did, yeah.
Okay, take the word devotion and cross it out. Cross it out. Devotion. This is not a devotion. Okay, that's a big mistake to make. The reason I got real hyper about it, like choleric about it, is because it's the life of the Holy Trinity. It's not a devotion. Now, you can be devoted to the divine will in the sense that this is what you think about most of the time, this is what you want to be involved in most of the time, and have a devotion in that way. But this is definitely not a devotion like the rosary and scapular and divine mercy and all that. It's not a devotion. It is the life of the most holy Trinity, eternal life and real life. You know the difference between real life of God and mystical life of God? We have to cover that. A lot of times we read things about, union with God, we talk about life of God, but they're talking about the life of grace. And God doesn't need grace, okay? God doesn't need grace. He gives it to us, but it comes out of the divine will. The real life of God is the divine will in operation. It's always in operation in the Holy Trinity. It's always active and ongoing. So that's the real life of God. And Jesus lives that real life in the Holy Eucharist. The real life of God is in the Holy Eucharist. The mystical life of God is grace that comes from the divine. Okay. So when I saw that word devotion, ain't devotion. Yeah.
Tom, can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Saint Faustina, did she live in the divine will?
Saint
Saint
Faustina.
Faustina.
Yeah, that's a mystery. It might be true. It might turn out one day that she did. She used some language in her diary that uses word phrases that are very similar to Louisa. And one day when she was at a retreat, he just had her take a piece of paper and on one side he said, cross, make a cross across it, X across it. And that's, you're going to X out your own will. And so the context of that was sort of kind of a powerful point that she may have lived in the divine will. It's possible. I don't really know. Someone asked me earlier, and I said it wrong, if you could might be living divine will without knowing it. Well, those children live in divine will before they reach the age of reason, and they don't know it. And but when they reach the age of reason, they start committing sin and they lose it. But it's possible that such a foul thing did, but we won't have any real assurance until probably some point in the future when somebody will see how we can prove that she did. But right now, I can't really prove it, but there are some signs that she might have done.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
You mentioned about the kingdom of divine will in each host. The kingdom of the divine will is in each host.
Yes,